Hey, welcome to another episode of Life in the Everyday. I'm Sarah, and I'm so happy to have you with us today.
And I'm Jake. I'm a journalist, which is a fancy word for someone who talks to people, listens to their stories, and shares them with everyone. Basically, I try to tell the truth about the world around us. But today, we're talking about something really fun, everyday life.
That's right, Jake. Sometimes the coolest stories are the ones that happen in our own backyards, right? Like, did you know that the best stories don't always have to be about superheroes or magic? Sometimes the most exciting things happen just because we're going through our day, like brushing our teeth or playing with our friends.
That's exactly it, Sarah. When I go out to report on a story, I often think, what makes this person's day interesting? It's not always about something big and special. It could be something small, like what someone had for lunch or what they do after school. It's the little things that make life special.
Yeah, like, I'm always fascinated by how everyone has their own routine. For example, I start my day by making a huge cup of hot chocolate. It's my favorite thing in the morning. What about you, Jake? What's your morning routine like?
Well, my mornings are a little different. I don't have hot chocolate, I'm more of a coffee person. But here's the thing, Sarah, every day, I wake up, and the first thing I do is check the news. I know that sounds like work, but I like knowing what's happening in the world. It's like checking in with the world before I start my day.
Oh, that's so cool. So, you're the guy who finds out all the important stuff. Like, if it's going to rain tomorrow or if there's a new video game coming out. You're the one sharing those stories with everyone?
Yep, that's me. But there's more to being a journalist than just telling people about the weather or new things. I like to share stories like the story about a kid who helped clean up a park, or a family who made their own backyard zoo. It's these everyday adventures that show how special life can be.
I love that. Everyday adventures. You know, we all have our own little adventures, even if they don't seem exciting to others. Like, I remember the other day I was walking my dog, and we saw the biggest squirrel I've ever seen. It was almost like the squirrel was staring right at me, like it was plotting something.
That's a good one. And you know what? That squirrel could totally be a story. It might seem funny, but what if that squirrel was doing something special, like gathering all the best acorns in town? Maybe that squirrel is a little hero in its own right. That's what I mean, sometimes the best stories come from the everyday things we see and do.
That's such a good point. Everything can be a story. So, Jake, when you're working, how do you find a good story? Do you just walk around and wait for something to happen?
Well, it's not always that simple. When I'm looking for stories, I think about what's happening around me. Sometimes, I'll talk to people and ask them what they're up to, just regular folks like you and me. You'd be surprised how much people have to share. Other times, I might read books, watch the news, or even scroll through social media to see what's on people's minds. The best stories are usually ones that make people say, "Wow, I didn't know that."
Oh, that reminds me of something. So, the other day, I was at the park, and I saw a bunch of kids planting flowers. I thought, wow, that's so nice. It's like they're making the world a little brighter. Wouldn't that be a great story?
Absolutely. That's a perfect example. It's a small thing, but it's big because it shows kindness and care. And, sometimes, we all need to hear stories like that. Stories about people doing good things, even if they're as simple as planting flowers, make us feel happy and inspired.
Yeah, and it makes me think that everyone has a story. Even people who might feel shy or not important, they have something interesting to say, right?
Exactly. I think the best part of my job is listening to people's stories. Sometimes, they don't realize how cool their story is until someone else hears it. I once met a woman who used to be afraid of the dark. But she learned how to be brave by reading books about nighttime animals. That's something small, but it's a big lesson, you know?
Wow, that's such a great example. I never thought about how we all have something important to share, even if it's not about winning a race or finding treasure. Maybe it's just about helping others, or doing something nice for your neighbor. Speaking of, Jake, I bet a lot of kids are wondering, how can they share their own stories?
Oh, I love that question. There are so many ways to share your story, even if you're not a journalist like me. You can tell stories through drawing, writing, singing, or even just talking to your friends and family. Maybe you're good at drawing pictures of animals, or you write cool stories about things you've imagined. Those are your stories, and they matter.
That's so true. And you know what? You don't always need a big fancy microphone to share a story either. You can just tell your story out loud, or draw it, or even record it on your phone if you want. Everyone has a voice, and it's important to use it. So, Jake, what do you think is the best part of doing what you do?
For me, the best part is knowing that my stories can help people see the world in a new way. Maybe they'll feel inspired to do something good, or maybe they'll just learn something they didn't know before. But it all comes back to one thing: stories are everywhere. Whether it's about a kid helping their neighbor or a squirrel who's on a secret mission, stories are all around us, and they make life so much more fun.
Wow, that's a great way to think about it, Jake. It's true, stories are everywhere, and they make us feel connected to each other. I hope all of you listening today feel inspired to find your own stories and share them with others.
Exactly. Whether you're telling stories with your friends, drawing pictures, or just talking about the things that make you smile, it's all important. Every story is worth telling.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's adventure in everyday life. Thank you so much, Jake, for joining us and sharing your stories about storytelling. And thank you, listeners, for being part of this journey with us. Remember, keep your eyes open, you never know when you'll find a good story. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and keep sharing those stories. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.